Good evening. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to our violin virtual solo instrument composition workshop. I always have to make sure I get all of the words in that. We are really excited to be workshopping 3 pieces from young composers tonight. If this is the first time you're tuning in to one of these workshops, I'll give you just a brief overview. Basically, what happens is students who are high school age or younger get to submit pieces for solo unaccompanied instruments, and they get to hear them performed live, and then they get feedback from a professional composer as well. So we are really excited to hear these pieces and workshop them. Before we get into the meat of it, I want to bring your attention to a couple other events that you can join us for. So we have a few more of these workshops. The next one is going to be on November 23rd. That one is for cello, also with Inti, who is going to be our mentor for this evening. And December 7th, we're going to have a workshop for saxophone with Alexandra Gardner. And all of these workshops take place as a part of the Elizabeth Henriksen mentorship program, of which Inti and Alex are 2 of our mentors, also Nina C. Young as well. And one other event related to the mentorship program that I want to just bring your attention to is on November 15th, again, also with Inti, is going to be a masterclass with all 3 of our mentorship mentees. So a different age group than the composers you're going to see this evening, but also taking a look at their music. And if you've seen any of the previous masterclasses, getting to know their music even better. So keep all of those dates on your calendar and you'll see our lovely faces again. But I don't want to delay our event for this evening much longer. So we are very excited to have with us Inti Figgis-Vizueta and Adrienne Munden-Dixon, who are going to be workshopping these compositions. So Inti is our composer mentor. Adrienne is our violinist. The first piece that we are going to hear is called Gavotte by Danning. And so I'm going to invite her up onto stage. And Danning, you can tell us a little bit about your piece, about where you are currently, physically, and then I will just let you all take it away.
Hello everyone, I'm Danning Zhang. I'm currently in Washington, D.C. My piece is called Gavotte in E minor because I have been really interested in Baroque dance music styles. I found that very fascinating, and that's why I wrote this piece. So you can
Beautiful.
You can perform it now.
Hi, Danny.
Can you all hear me? Okay? Thumbs up.
Yes.
Thanks.
Clap, 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 clap. Oh, beautiful. Oh, please. Okay, beautiful. Yeah, no, this is lovely. Adrienne, would you mind a meeting? Do you want to chat a little bit about
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah, let me move my
peace,
mic actually.
peace.
Yeah, I love the fact that you chose to write it in E minor. Often not a key that we hear a gavotte in. So I really enjoyed that. I thought it was really creative and really lovely writing. I guess I have a couple questions for you, Danny.
Okay.
But we can get into that later. They're really specific little violin and harmonic questions. But I'd love just to hear your thoughts about if this is the realization that you were imagining, or what your thoughts are on the performance.
So I think you carried out this performance really beautifully.
Thank you.
For sure. And so you said E minor is like a fairly uncommon key to see a gavotte or maybe other dance pieces, I don't know, in, but I actually didn't know the fact at the moment when I was writing it. I just thought this key sounds nice.
And especially for the violin, it's a really nice key for the violin. So thank you for doing that.
But
Yeah. No, I mean it sounded beautiful. And yeah, no, the E minor is such a beautiful key, especially with the yeah, that I feel like were you playing the E's on the A string, Adrienne, or were you playing open E's?
Some of them I was choosing to, and that's kind of nice that you left it open ended. There weren't like fingerings written, so I could, especially with the dynamics that you chose, especially on repeats. I did something, some subtle differences the second time. That sometimes I would choose to do open E, or I could do a fourth finger on the A string to change the timbre on a repeat. So I'm curious what if there were any particular composers or gavottes in particular that you were inspired by.
so I have listened to a couple of gavottes in Bach's English suites and French suites, as well as the six sonatas and partitas for solo violin, also by Bach, specifically the gavotte in the last suite.
If you like this key and violin, and I believe there's minuets in it, but Mozart's E minor sonata for violin and piano, you might enjoy that piece also.
Okay, so thanks for that recommendation.
Beautiful. Yeah, no, this was really lovely. So this it is kind of quite a tight piece, right? Like these two repeats. Kind of we stay within the same kind of octave or register for everything that you've written. Do you imagine this being kind of a part of something longer, or is this like just like a really beautiful little da?
I think it was be kind of great just standing alone as a dance piece.
Okay, cool. Cool. Yeah, I mean, just because, yeah, we, thinking about like, what another section would be, or ways to kind of expand in any direction, which like it actually doesn't really need. It's such a kind of tight and kind of succinct musical, um, little memory tidbit. Really, yeah, really beautiful. Hmm. Wondering what is trying to think what we can delve into a little bit more, Adrian. Do you have any sense?
I actually have a question. So coming from a performer's perspective, you're writing in a Baroque style. If you have any particular, wishes or, uh, choices you'd be all right with me making, like I used vibrato in this performance, for example. is that something that you would be open to for this piece, which often is not something used as a blanket? It was almost like a ornament in itself at the time. So, or also on that subject, using ornaments that aren't written, if you would be open to that, or if this is, what you've written is exactly what you'd like to hear.
I mean, so talking about the ornaments, because I chose these because these ornaments are very commonly seen in pieces of like alike in style, and also because their sounds good. But so at the point of like articulation marks or whatever, I'm open to variations in that.
Great. Yeah, I think that, before Bach, my understanding, I'm not really a music historian, but just my understanding is from me studying violin pieces for the most part, that before Bach, many Baroque composers didn't write in everything that they expected to hear, like ornaments, or there was always an expectation of some improvisation, whether it was, just through ornaments or adding notes. And so that's something that comes to mind when I see a contemporary piece written in a Baroque style. I'm wondering how much leeway the performer has. I have one specific question. The ornament at the very end. So you have this mordent written, and I was wondering, harmonically, right? That should just be an E and a D. Since we're in E minor, would you like a D sharp?
Yes, so wait. So I do expect inverted mordents to be played like a half step lower.
Okay, great.
So D sharp is okay.
Yeah, I mean, talking about articulation, I'm seeing kind of that there's either slurred phrase or everything is kind of staccato or like specified as staccato. Are those the only, like, in the sense that when we see only two kinds of articulations, there's a way of like being like, okay, this is this kind of phrase and this is that kind of phrase. Is there any kind of like long in the middle, like a full bow on a certain note, or something like where it isn't there isn't a slow, but it's also not a kind of fast note, because that's kind of what I was hearing Adrienne too with the vibrato a little bit, is that they were like a little bit it was like in the in between a little bit with the articulations. So yeah, just wondering where you sit in that. If that's clear, I'm also happy to restate the question if that.
I mean, so I didn't really get what you're talking about. Is it like?
Sure,
I don't know how
sure.
to say that.
No worries. So like, looking at it, it looks like basically every phrase either has a slur that you're specifying or a staccato marking. So I'm asking if there's any kind of notes that are I don't know how to say it, that kind of have an articulation that's freer or that's like longer or fuller or anything like that.
So what I've written here is mostly what I expect to hear. And okay, so and I do hear you talking about like articulation marks, specifically the ones played on the violin, but I actually play piano, so I don't know really much about that kind of stuff.
Totally. That makes sense. Cool. Okay, cool. You're all good. Yeah, I mean, it's yeah, I feel it. I mean, Adrian, I mean, I know again, this is like in this kind of interesting space of like there's kind of an interpretive, there's a kind of interpretive tradition with this style that like you're like playing with in certain ways. Is there anything that like looking at it would help you go in one way or the other when it comes to how I don't know, like how you might like let's say this piece is on your stand for like a month instead of, a minute or something. Like is it like where would you start to like push and pull at what you're seeing?
Can you hear me okay? Great. Okay. Or is it kind of soft? Okay.
It's a little.
Okay, I'll speak up. When I was playing, it was okay, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll speak really close to this. I guess when I first started looking at it, just trying to understand the parts of the dynamics give me a lot to interpret, but also just harmonically, even though there's no chord changes that you've written or there's no accompaniment, but trying to interpret what where the peaks of the phrase are, right, and how long the phrases are, and then knowing that you're okay with some leeway of adding things or you know trying new things out with it that aren't necessarily notated. Then as I got to know the piece better, I might try different positions, adding, like higher on the violin, different strings, different slurs, timing wise. I kind of did that in the second time of what we're called the B section, the crescendo back into the forte. I took a little time just to really place forte. Just things like that. And as time, if I had it for a month, I might take a lot of liberties with maybe adding solpant or adding other sounds that maybe are considered. Solpant was used in Baroque times, but something maybe a little more unconventional. Do you know what I mean by solpant, Danning? Solpanticello.
I think I've heard of that articulation term.
So it's basically just playing very close to the bridge. It produces a metallic sound instead of. So that's a different color that you can use sometimes.
Okay.
I mean, Danny, if it's okay, and Adrian, if you're interested, do we want to try like playing like a phrase or something with like again like hearing this too, like there's the kind of replicating Baroque sound, like a little tasto, no vibrato, really light, but however, like doing something like that, and then doing something like quite Ponticello-y or something, and just so we can hear the way in which, and then maybe I don't know, I don't want to push do too much, but like, and then maybe like what it would sound like with those things together, because maybe that's another kind of avenue that that like is part of string tradition and string writing at the moment and everything. But maybe isn't like the most immediate thing, coming from the piano, which is the piano. Danning, would you be okay with that?
Yeah, it seems like it will be a lot of fun experimenting with articulations and whatever.
Totally.
So first, I try more of a Baroque style with less vibrato, and yeah, we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll just do the first phrase. Is that okay? So a more or less romantic interpretation. I have one more question, actually, Danny. Here, can you hear me talking?
Yes.
Okay, great. The B at the end of this phrase with the mordant, do you want that also to be an A sharp, a half step down from that, even though, yeah, what's your preference?
I would prefer a half step below again.
Cool. Yes, it sounded very Baroque. Beautiful. Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean so I mean, if we're thinking about like what did we hear differently? We were all students of our ears and listening. There's such a kind of yeah, there was a lightness, right? A kind of I don't know. There was something there that I don't know. I don't know how to talk about Baroque aesthetics super well, but no, it was super beautiful in there. Could we hear it like actually like very romantic now, but like almost like overly romantic, like um beautiful. And sorry, not to make you do it once more, but could we hear it like super ponty, like kind of maybe a little bit of heaviness or something, and some of
Sure.
um beautiful.
I added
Uh,
a little run for you there, also, Danning. Hope that's okay.
That's okay.
Beautiful. Danning, did you like where I guess like, where was there one that felt perfect to you, or did all of them how did I don't know, reactions?
I think all of them were pretty cool interpretations.
You can see how, with what you've written, someone can interpret it many different ways. And that's really nice. I personally, as a performer, really like to be given a lot of room to do that, as long as I understand, basically what you are okay with or what you want and what your, yeah, maybe what your language or interests are.
Yeah, because different interpretations can be fun, and that's the case with pretty much every composer out there.
And I think with interpretation too, you're specifying a very specific tempo, but I feel like within some of these traditions, like tempo is something that's a little fluctuating sometimes depending on phrase. And maybe I can't tell if we heard that, but I think it is like almost part of the tradition and practice itself. And so is that also something that you feel comfortable being kind of you know pushed and prodded a little bit, Denning?
Yeah, because I think every musician kind of likes some freedom in interpreting music.
100%. I mean, and so actually, that's a really interesting thing here too, because when we talk about kind of what is on the score and what isn't on the score, and both of which are so important, to performers who might be touching this piece without you in the room. Which I'm personally someone who is almost always in the room, so maybe I'm a bad example, but I do think so I mean that also could be something that you indicate some kind of flexibility with that tempo, with a word, a phrase, etc. And I mean, I guess part of that too is thinking, like, looking at this B section, we definitely have this kind of like we're ending mezzo forte, we start piano, we have this crescendo over those three bars. Is there any dynamic interplay that also feels like it should be there or not? Um, yeah. Or dynamic flexibility, I guess is what I mean. Like flexibility, interpretive flexibility. How about
Yeah, I mean, dynamics are more of like an interpretation thing. And I know this from personal experience, since many of my box scores have literally no dynamics or articulation, even tempo marks labeled, and I just have to figure it out myself. And honestly, that's pretty interesting.
I might even go so far as to say it might be the most interesting thing to me is that interpretation, that relationship, how far things go sometimes.
Yes.
Adrienne, do you have yeah, I mean, see, looking at things like this, I always want to just like push the extremes of them a little bit, right? Like being like, okay, well, what would it mean to like, so like let's say we have Adrienne, you're the generous performer. You look at this, and you're like, I'm gonna try and play it close to what you're seeing. But someone else is like, oh, I know this aesthetic, I know this tradition. I'm not gonna look at what's on the page. I'm gonna make it completely mine. And like just kind of go off the rails a little bit, but still maybe play the pitches. Um, is there anything I mean, I don't want to ask that of you immediately, but if there were places that you would push, if I was, if you were really kind of, I don't know, if you had a heavy touch as a performer, in terms of, the kind of piece that you're playing. Yeah, would I don't know where my question is going.
How far would I change or maybe push stuff?
Maybe, yeah.
I've with certain pieces I know really well, especially some Baroque pieces, just because they kind of lend themselves to that. But really, you can do it with anything. But some pieces have more sparseness, at least, so there's more space to add or reimagine certain things. When I've taken a very personal interpretation of some pieces, either I've like changed some tempos, or for example, there's a personal fantasia that my quartet has performed a lot, that we have gone a tocca from another quartet straight into that, and then had done an accelerando over the whole piece. Which is not period appropriate for sure. But something like that. If we're feeling like taking very great liberties, I might add, for example, like I'm just looking at the score right now. There's some places maybe I would do, instead of like as quarter notes, I would do as like eighth notes or 16th notes, or you could even change the rhythm without changing notes, depending on how much energy or what I wanted to convey there. But thinking of all the different musical aspects like tempo, dynamics, articulation, and rhythm, as and even pitches, like when I added a run, but it was within the key. Then those are all places to start with, and of course including timbre, like the solpant or things like that. You could do pizzicato, like all kinds of things. So those are the elements I like to consider and see where but always adding to the music, right? We don't want to do something that either doesn't feel natural, or but obviously also, sorry, I'm like getting really philosophical now. What feels natural to one person, so really, I mean, that's a nice thing about your piece, is that you leave a lot up to the performer. So for one performance, it could be totally different than the next, with the same performer, and of course with others. Yeah. So yeah, thank you for writing such a lovely and enjoyable piece to play.
No, agreed.
And thank you for performing it as well.
I can't wait to hear more from you.
Okay.
Big agree.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much. I really enjoyed listening to the piece in all of its different iterations and just hearing the feedback about it. So I think we'll transition into our second piece now, which is going to be an excerpt of a longer piece. The composer can tell you more about it than I can. But so this is going to be an excerpt from a piece called Fusili by Willa. So we can invite her up on stage, and I will let you all take it from there.
Hi, Willa.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. I can introduce myself. I'm Willa Hawthorne. I'm 17 and I'm from Los Angeles.
Beautiful. Welcome. Well, I guess I'm in T and I'm in New York, but great to, and that's Adrienne. Where is Adrienne?
Hi. I guess I'll just tell you all where I am. I usually live in New York, but I am currently visiting. Sorry, I'm currently visiting my family in Savannah, Georgia.
Beautiful. Should we grab the score, put it up, see what we're looking at? Slash, would you like to introduce anything about your piece, though?
Yeah, sure. So I'm currently in the Los Angeles Philharmonic's Nancy Mary Sanders Composer Fellowship Program, and this piece was our first project of this year, which was very exciting. So the prompt was to write a miniature for a solo instrument, and the prompt was to write something inspired by a feeling of joy, especially like coming out of the pandemic. So this is an excerpt from the piece. The piece is about 2 minutes long, and this is kind of the second half of the piece, which is why it looks a little choppy. And I'm sorry, there's no tempo marking either, which I just realized. But so yeah, this is an excerpt from that.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about what tempo you want, but I just chose something warm and expressive, like you indicated.
Right, that's perfect. Thank you.
How joyful. It was very joyful. Yeah. Jen, I always want to defer to you as the person who just played the thing. Reactions. How did it feel? There was some really beautiful runs in there. There's some nice string crossing. A lot of string crossing. We love it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed learning this piece in the past few days, yeah, I really like as you said, the joy in it, and the modal mixtures you have in there, yeah, I'm really curious to hear, because I wasn't sure what this was an excerpt from, so I'm really curious to hear more about the piece and the title, and also what images you were thinking of, or any more backstory on the piece.
Yeah, so I actually struggle a lot with naming pieces, so I tend to just grab words that I like. So back in June, I wrote a piece titled Orzo, And from there, this is my third piece that I've named after pasta.
I love
kind
that.
of,
I'm very into that.
Yeah, just because I think, well, I thought orzo was just a beautiful word in and of itself, and then I just kind of kept going. I think it would be cool if I have like a larger collection, if I ever release an album or anything, to have all the titles be named after pasta. But I also thought it fit nicely into the theme of joy, because I would say that pasta is something that brings me joy. So yeah, and the beginning of the piece really plays with more harmonics and glisses, very extended technique, and then kind of doesn't really fall within any like certain harmonies or anything. But the second half of the piece kind of, yeah, becomes melodic.
Beautiful. Also, it sounds like Fusili, right? Like it does have that kind of like cyclic kind of changes and, you know, little expansions.
I'm curious, Andre, what's your instrument or instrument that you play?
Can you repeat that?
I'm sorry.
Cut out a little bit.
What's your instrument or the instruments that you play?
I'm primarily a cellist, but I also sing.
Beautiful. Is it okay if I like pick on a couple spots and be like, what does this mean? / like,
Oh,
you know, like,
yes, of course.
Beautiful. So I think just looking at this page in particular, I am always interested in these kind of gradations of things. For example, overpressure being something that has like a million variations, crushing the tone, letting the tone speak, slow bow, fast bow, digging in, subharmonics, you know, like there's like a kind of entire thingy of it. And so where, you know, I guess, I mean, there's question of which did you want? And then the nice answer of that is whatever the person decides to do, which is a really beautiful answer. But then there's the follow-up question of, is there any of that, are there any of the options of what overpressure is that you wouldn't like in this particular part?
Yeah, I think maybe definitely more over. I think, yeah, up to the performer, but also I definitely want it to sound like overpressure. And I would say don't shy away from making it sound even like a little bit uncomfortable, but definitely still having the notes speak through that.
Yeah, the one that I went with, which was more like scratchy solpant, was mostly just dictated with the tempo that I chose. But right. I would love to hear if there was a certain, you know, part of the, I can show you. I'm sure you have a good idea. If where I was doing it was here, closer to the bridge. If you want,
yeah,
you know, like where you want it on the.
Yeah, no, that was great. I know it's hard to do overpressure sometimes in open strings. So definitely playing it closer to the bridge gave it a really nice effect.
Totally. I mean, so it's like, I mean, question mark, are we hearing more overtones as we get to like solpant versus like kind of ordinario or like near to the bridge? I can't tell what I'm hearing or not sometimes.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, cool. Okay, beautiful. Awesome. Well, I guess I also asked that because we have this fortissimo, and I'm like, what, you know, fortissimo and overpressure, like they kind of, they're in collusion a little bit, and then there's all, you know, also with the kind of tempo staying the same, and you know, overpressure itself might like drag tempo a little bit and all that. So
Right.
so just I'm wondering that, and then also this kind of very immediate cut to piano and flautendo. Like, is there? I don't even know what my question is. Just, you know, is is that like a very kind of dramatic shift, or is it like because like when we think of flautendo too, I guess I also think of kind of a little sul tasto. So it's like we're moving from solpant overpressure to flautendo tasto in a moment. And so I guess like how what's the temporality of that gesture? I don't know. Like, what's the what's the timing? What's the pacing? What's the phrasing? Like, how did you imagine that?
Yeah, I think it's immediate as physically possible. Obviously, I don't want to. It might be strenuous. I know it's kind of a difficult shift, from overpressure to a very airy bow. But I think just emphasizing the contrast between those two different textures, because obviously they're very different. So I think, yeah, like a hard cut would emphasize the juxtaposition between the two even more.
Beautiful. Cool. Adrienne, give me some idiomatic thoughts, because I'm looking at this and I'm like, this looks amazing. Like, and of course, like, Willow being a string player, being a string player, like, of course it is. But is there anything in there for you that I don't know, other than, of course, like kind of timbral and dramatic shifts and stuff?
I really like with this, kind of minimalist writing that you have that with all of these other textures with the overpressure. Yeah, and so I know we haven't communicated yet, or until now. So it's really helpful to hear your thoughts on what you want the overpressure. Because, like Inti said, it can mean a lot of different stuff to an interpreter, and like yourself, I'm sure. There's a lot of ways to interpret that. And with the tempo, I'm curious now, what tempo, like faster or slower?
Yeah, originally I think it was quarter equals 8. So you were pretty close, I think. But some of those harder, I think, shifts get a little bit quick. But the tempo you played was great. I think as long as you're able to, communicate kind of the warm, expressive, joyful tone of the piece, which you definitely will.
And then with the, I guess the first time we get the overpressure with the separate notes at the end of 27, there I was just trying to kind of like a bit of an accent on them just to bring them out to contrast with and if that might sometimes drag the tempo a little bit, just in order to like really get them to stick out. If that's, or if you really, really want to keep this like driving, like the not losing any time or energy.
Yeah, I think tempo fluctuation is totally fine, especially obviously it's a solo piece. So I think that's something that you're able to take a look with, equally able in a solo piece. So yeah, I didn't feel like it lost energy or anything.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I really, I'm sorry to hop on this overpressure, like this juxtaposition thing, but it seems like it occurs like kind of, at a couple of the moments near the end. And in the sense that like we're saying that, we leave these things up to the interpreter because they kind of have an umbrella of meanings, right? And so I think like when we look at a score sometimes and we see that that's happening, there's a kind of tendency to make sure that each time it happens similarly. So there's like a kind of what's the word? A kind of subtextual message that they are linked, and that the linkage means that it's kind of sorry, my hands are over here. A kind of fixed interpretation of like what that juxtaposition looks like. And wondering whether you wanted gradations of that to shift as we kind of neared the end of the piece. Because like, for example, like a kind of light overpressure when we first see it to a really heavy overpressure, like that last part at like 30 or something, like is that's a very kind of different dramatic thing, I guess.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think I guess maybe with the open strings, you would naturally get kind of a different sound anyway. But yeah, I think earlier on, it could be, you can kind of play with making it even crunchier. I don't know if that's the right word, but just, to emphasize those contrasts that by the end, like with those open strings, you can really get a unique sound. And
Totally. I was just gonna say, I really wanted like we finally got to our octave harmonics, and then they left. And I was like, oh, wait, I want stick around. We finally got to you. Like,
yeah, the first part of the piece a lot with those octave harmonics.
okay, cool. So this is our retch or whatever, or our recap.
Yeah, I would love even more of the end after we have all this action. To have, I just love this kind of. It feels like the energy is like now like this pure energy once we get to the open strings and then the harmonics. And as a performer, this is I love when I get to this part here, and so I could stand to have it last a little longer.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think I could draw that out more.
Person who controls pages, could we go to the first page? Okay, amazing, cool. Well, yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because like we are getting, we're getting these the way in which you're kind of juxtaposing like bow placement, feels really interesting, and I'm kind of like where like how, like I was hearing it for sure, but I'm like, is there I guess look, kind of starting ordinary, flautando, like, I'm trying to think of how to say. I guess just like the idea of moving from ordinario to flautando while crescendoing is like one that kind of like I'm like like I mean, like other than the fact that you can just like keep throwing the bow and like that'll feel really nice and it sounds really nice and stuff. But is there like I don't know. I'm trying to think of how to form the question of like maybe the question is, what does fortissimo flautando how does it strike you as the person writing it, and also Adrienne is the person playing it, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a little bit contradictory, the flautando.
But it's
forte,
beautiful.
but...
It's beautiful. Like there's no badness here. Like it's like contradictions are beautiful, but like I'm just wondering, like, because you're also a string player, like if that
yeah, I think
how that vibes.
Yeah, maybe it's more to do with the motion of the bow and kind of these larger gestures using your whole arm to move the bow as opposed to how the sound would come out. So yeah, maybe like I could expand on that more instead of just forte, talk about more the motion, because it's definitely supposed to sound airy and wispy, and I think that's kind of contrasting from this idea of forte. But I think it has to do more with the motion, like expanding the motion. I think, as a string player, when I try to play forte, I feel like sometimes, you often use more motion, and I think that's what I was trying to get at with that crescendo.
Yeah, I was just interpreting it as expansive in order to get the fortissimo and flautando, but just trying to use as much bow as I could in the tempo with the string crossings.
Yeah.
Totally. I guess one other bit that comes to mind a little bit is articulation, because we have so much string crossing. Like there is kind of, I guess, wondering when we have, so we have like elements of like, okay, we have bow placement, and it's, how that changes with dynamic, of course, like we're kind of getting more motion, more sound, more bow, all of that. And whether like a way to like, I don't know, again, just like thinking about like if flautando is like slurred and ordinario is like staccato, or like spiccato, or or like a very kind of light bouncing bow, that like it could accentuate aspects of both of those spaces that you're kind of shifting between. I don't know, that's just that's a
no, definitely.
Oh, beautiful. This piece is so pretty. I mean, I guess actually this does warrant a little bit of talk about dynamics, because you are kind of quite specific with them. Is in the sense that we have this interpretability, of course, with the solo piece. do you, let me think of how to say it. Could you imagine the piece with no dynamics? And if you could, like, what, like, I'm trying to think of how to say it. Like looking at this, I feel like I see the dynamics as part of the writing already. And I'm like, is there any place where you would want, that to be pushed in either direction, at the behest of the performer?
Yeah, definitely. I think like looking at even measure 21, maybe talking about the performer about, playing those as an echo, each little group of three, as opposed to forte and then piano could be something interesting, and would maybe add another dimension aside from dynamic contrast, because that was definitely the effect I was going for there. But giving the performer the ability to play with that, I think would be nice.
Right. And like, what does an echo sound like in different spaces, right? Like maybe,
Right.
maybe it's like it's shifting happens a little bit, or maybe there's like placement or some, or timbre or whatever. I definitely agree. I think like, and it definitely comes through in like how you've written the piece already. Like it's very kind of clear that that's what that's asking for. But there could be a lot of possibility on the part of like an interpreting player if you specify actually like what the form is of that like phrase,
Right.
and like asking people to play with that. Yeah, Adrienne, we haven't heard from you. What do you think?
I was just, one thing that I was thinking of while I was working on it was how you have these accents on the the half bar, the half beat on the 1 and 2 in, and then you mix it up, right? And so you kind of set us up with this like really grounding feeling, and then it feels almost like you've like turned us, or like it's weightless now suddenly, and so I really enjoy that aspect of it, and throughout the whole piece, and you do that also harmonically, and so those were the two aspects that I really enjoyed, is that it's really grounding, and then like changing our perspective like on an instant.
Oh, well, thank you.
So I know that we keep looking at half of a piece, right? Or like when I look at it, I have to remind myself a little bit, in the sense that I haven't seen the beginning of it. Register seems like something we're kind of quite fixed in for this section, and then the harmonics, open it up, question mark. I don't know. I never know if I consider harmonics like registerally different. I don't know, but versus like timbrely, I don't know. That's a very personal thing. But is there more exploration of like the higher register at the beginning? Is that why we get into this kind of motoric like low jam?
Yeah. The beginning focuses on fifths through all of the strings, both with harmonics and not with harmonics. So in that sense, it plays with that, and also kind of harmonic gliss. And I think that is definitely a textural change, maybe register. It gets pretty high. So
cool. Yay. Okay, amazing. Right, because I was looking at these ones and I was like, why are they not an octave up? Why are they not 2 octaves up at any point? But also no. Yeah. Cool. Can we look at the second page one more time? I know we're kind of running up against time a little bit. I was just gonna say, these pieces are so beautiful at the end. I'm a sucker. Like I will say, I end string pieces with pieces so much. I'm just like every time I see it, I'm like, this is so beautiful. So, well, yeah. I mean, I guess like the only I guess question mark about the appearance of pieces in the first section as well. Question mark.
Yeah, there's no pizzicato in the first.
Okay, so it just
section.
appears in this little
Yeah.
indie. Yes.
Yeah, no. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I thought it's kind of fading away from what it was, and yeah, incorporating the harmonics or harmonic pits, I think, is such an interesting sound. So I wanted to put that in there, definitely.
I mean, I guess, sorry, I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, we have overpressure and we have flotando. Do we have pits and do we have Bartok pits? Like, not to say that we have to do every trick in the book, but it could be a nice, like, it could be a nice
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
But that's very
No, I'm a big fan of Bartok Pit, so I think that would be, yeah. I wanted a little surprise at the end. That could be good.
my God, a four string. Bah! I don't know.
Oh no, that's great.
You have to like create like a caption in order for like the performer to be able to like pull all 4 strings like that.
Yes.
Oh my God, yeah.
Just a thought.
Who did that? Someone did like a really slow violin piece with like a comb. I think it was it Miami? De Silva? I don't know, but it was like a really beautiful piece, and it was just like comb on strings with electronics, and I was just like, this is so gorgeous. And it like kind of you had like both kind of it hitting it laterally, but then also like up and down. It's very pretty. Cool. Do we have any any final questions? Any thoughts? Anything? Okay, cool. Well, I will say this is a really beautiful piece. Thank you so much for sharing it and for writing it.
Oh, well, thank you both. It sounded beautiful, and thank you for the lovely feedback from both of you.
Thank you. I can't wait to hear the first part of the piece.
Oh yes, I'll send it along to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, totally agreed. And I was just thinking back to like something that you were saying very early in the discussion about naming pieces, and I relate a lot. The name is usually the last thing that I put on a piece, so maybe I'll start going through names of pastas as well. Pasta brings me joy as well. So awesome. But yes, thank you so much for sharing that. That was wonderful to listen to and to dig into a bit. So we've got one more piece, which was written by Brittany. So I'll invite Brittany to come up on stage, and she can introduce her piece For a Dead Friend, and I'll leave you all to it.
Hi everyone, my name is Brittany Doe. I'm living in Vancouver, Canada. My main instrument is the violin, so I felt a lot of pressure when writing this piece, as a violinist. This piece is called For a Dead Friend. Just FYI, there is no real dead friend, so that's a good. It's just a metaphor. A while back, I kind of broke up with a friend, and so it's like a metaphorically dead friend. Yeah, and so this was my creative interpretation on a chaconne or a passacaglia. There's this sort of like a refrain, like a very slow, somber, and then it goes to something fast, and then it always goes back to this very sort of kind of like bowing motion, very slow. Yeah. So I'm very excited to hear Adrian's interpretation.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for introducing us. And also, I will say, we've all had friend breakups. We move through them. And I never thought about writing a piece for one, so that's a very good idea. Thank you. Yes, excited to hear.
Thank
Woo!
you. I hope your fingers are okay. I'm sorry about that.
It's great, thank you.
I know there are very large stretches.
Beautiful. Wow, congrats. That's a beautiful, that is an expansive piece. There's so many beautiful sections there. Could we go back to the first page? Disembodied cursor. Yeah. So, Adrienne, how are you feeling? How did it hit?
Good. I mean, I haven't spent much time with this piece. I received it about a week ago. So, you know, I've been getting to know this piece better and better every day that I spend with it. And, you know, I figured just from looking at it that either you were a violinist or you knew violin repertoire intimately. And so I could hear some quotes from certain pieces, some Izai and show pieces like that. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really, really wonderful, solid piece, and I'm really looking forward to continuing to get to know it.
Yeah, I mean, with that specific, I mean, I actually, it's like, so it's been actually really cool to go from the first piece to the second to the third in terms of specificity. You know, looking at the fingerings, the bowings, at obviously you're looking at the diagram and you're like, oh, this person knows violin. Did that was that help? Like that was helpful, I'm sure. Did like where did it affect interpretive decisions in certain ways? I know that's a really broad question, which is probably yes, but you know, as an opening.
Yeah, since I could see some quotes and techniques that are very violin-y. I had an idea of at least a starting point for what I thought Brittany was going for. Um, uh, you know, there's some you were very specific about with certain fingerings, and I did the fingerings that you or please played on the strings. There's some fingerings that just for my hand work better for me. So I did all the specified strings. There's just some I use my first finger sometimes more than for some of the trills higher on the instrument just because of the width, how far away the strings are. I have a very, very narrow finger. So I just tried to, to get the timbres that you specified. But some of the fingerings I did differently.
Yeah, I have quite large hands, so actually most of the fingerings are for me. Yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, Brittany, would you like so I guess like would you oh my god, I'm sorry, you know, I'm speaking to two violinists, so I'm like, okay, well, how does that work in the violin world? Like, do you normally like send like would you send this piece to someone else to play with the fingerings that you've specified?
I actually have two versions, and I didn't realize I sent this one. I have one, it's called like I call it like an Urtext version where there's no bowings or fingerings. It's just, you know, the notes and all the dynamic markings and everything. And then there's this version with all the fingerings and bowings. Yeah.
That's cool to hear. Actually, I was just wondering about like 24, 25. Just because we're getting so much rearticulation, you know, with those phrases, and I was wondering whether like you wanted the D to be droning on that more. Because like when I was thinking of it, I was, you know, and looking at like the kind of play in and around the open string, I was just like, is that did you want more drone slash more of a continuous like open string against those phrases or
Yeah, I just wanted sort of like a more fuller sound, not necessarily like a continuous line, but just add to the depth of the sound.
Cool. I mean, I guess other questions just about the chords themselves. I felt like we were hearing a lot that were like, you know, I mean, within the tradition of bass, high note, kind of, down bows kind of thing. Did you want any other, I guess, approaches to those chords?
Yeah, so actually one of the things that I struggled most with this piece was I wanted to sound very fluid in one line. And obviously with chords, you're gonna have to break them. And then some of the bowings I know are a little awkward, having to start our chord on up bow. So that was one of the things I was struggling with. I did try, starting the chord from the top note going down, but then I wasn't too sure. And then it just got very complicated. So I just left it as is in the traditional way of just low and then top strings.
I have a question. For example, the triple stops in measure 1, 2, 3, 4, measure 5. Since you have those written as dotted half notes, and then later on you specify, like in 15, that the bottom notes are held just one beat and the top 2 beats. How long would you like the bottom notes to be held in, was it measure 5 for those triple stops?
Yeah. So whenever it's longer out in my head, I was just, I want it to sound like one string. Like in Bach where you have to play 3 strings at once. That's what I was going for. And so with that one, I would like the bottom note to be held as long as possible, if that makes sense. If possible, 3 strings. But broken is also fine as well.
Yeah. I mean, I guess with that too, we're talking. I don't want to keep ringing the same chime, but like, in terms of like variation in interpretation that a player might like bring to it, um, I have I guess wondering whether with that fluidity that you're talking about, and like obviously like this is touching a lot of oh my god, a lot of encoded idiomatic things that both of you probably know, like fairly well. But like, would you want any kind of push or pull, kind of as Adrian's asking about, like, yeah, kind of bottom top, where like you specify it later, but it's like, you know, starting more on the bottom and letting that like hold for a little bit, and then letting the top note creep in a little bit is itself like a kind of very different like phrasing of everything, and whether the kind of gamut of possibility would be something that you were interested in, or whether the kind of because I guess when I hear fluidity and I hear like continuousness and smoothness and words like that, um, I'm always kind of curious whether it's like sameness or difference or variation or gradation of, oh my god, I keep doing it, gradation of different things. So just like where, yeah, like how much.
Yeah, like the fluidity I was thinking of is just like the continuation of sound. It's sounding very full, kind of like an organ, especially in Bach. Like I think most violinists try to continue their have a very continuous sound, not having it broken, like clunky, I guess. So that's what I was going for. And for interpretation, yeah, I wanted to leave it up to the player, push and pull wherever they felt like it. Tempo as well. There aren't that tempo isn't too strict.
Totally. Well, and it's actually, sorry, I didn't actually reference the fact that you had sent this like Britney specific score, and there was also this kind of like interprety score, which I'm, curious to look at, I'm sure. But I am looking at it. I'm like, okay, I have to imagine that these things are in here. Yeah, I'm trying to think what else. So I mean, thinking, when you're talking about the kind of Bach-y 3-note organy chord sound. I feel like sometimes I like, and fullness too. Are you also talking about like kind of heavier bow pressure for like those for those for those chords? Just because like I know when I'm trying to play chords on violin, I need to just like press really hard to hear all 3 strings like at that point, and it does kind of have its own dynamic shape to it. And actually, dynamics are really interesting too, because like I remember looking at 46 when it happened and being like, how do you start that high P and Unissimo? You know, like and like the descending phrase with a that high with a kind of crescendo. You know, like and again, like the having conflicting things is not a bad thing at all, or ever is a bad thing. But just wondering, like, yeah, like, is it like as quiet as possible that high kind of vibe?
Sorry, are you asking if it's too high and if it's too quiet? I didn't understand the question.
Oh yeah, sorry. I go ranting, so please, like, yeah, please tell me. No, I was just thinking that in measure 46, it's really high for how quiet you want it to be.
Yeah.
Just compared to the rest of the dynamic markings in the piece.
Oh yeah, that one I wanted sort of like a contrast to the very heavy sound, like kind of like a fluttering light on the E string. So yeah, measure 46, all those little glittery passage. I want it to sound very light and then slowly go into more fuller sound, into the trills.
Well, that makes sense to me. Adrian, Adrian, how did dynamics feel to you as a opening question?
Good. I mean, 46. I really liked, especially that effect. I think that was really effective writing. I guess some of the like measure 15, for example, where you have piano and some quadruple stops. There, I was really just trying to have this what I interpreted as a light moment and less intense energy as much as possible, and having like a kind of a softness to it. But yeah, sometimes the quadruple stops like also high on the E string. To me, if we're talking about things that seem like at odds with each other, sometimes that would, if I'm going to bring out one moment, would be that. But I think I understood what you wanted there and tried to achieve that.
Beautiful.
But I mean, I also, as a violinist, really loved all the, like I've already said, violin idiomatic techniques that you employed, and I think they're really colorful. So you didn't use a lot of timbres that we talked about earlier, like sol pont or things like that, but just the motives that you were using, the techniques were very colorful, and I thought it was really effective for having this kind of chaconne.
Thank you.
Yes. No. I'm sorry. I need to compliment more. Yes. No. It was really beautiful. And I loved the kind of section by section. Like I was like, okay, we're in trills. Okay, we're there. And yeah, it was really beautiful. Could we disembodied cursor? Could we see the second? Yes. Beautiful. I was just gonna say this faster, the presto, the poco excel, beautiful part. I was just like, ooh, we've arrived, we're there. So I liked it. Trying to think if there's anything looking at it. Yeah, I mean, I think form feels really interesting in this piece, because I do feel like it's very kind of declarative in each moment, right? That it's like this, we've had this kind of phrase. We go back to the lament, and then we, kind of have more motion back, more motion back. I was wondering, trying to think of how to phrase the question. Just like looking at 81, and we had like, well, I feel like I'm just like thinking about dynamics too much lately. But like looking at 77 and 81, I'm like, is like the kind of the fortissimo in 81, like how, like, is that like a really dramatic moment? I guess is my question. Or should it be? I guess like
Yeah, I guess with the reason why I wrote 2 fortissimos was 81. I was in my mind, I was thinking like full bows for those trills, and then for 77, because it is crossing the strings, you can't really use too much of the bow, I guess, because you are going quite fast. So I guess with a faster bow, you normally wouldn't use that much pressure. So at 81, I was thinking, very heavy, a bit more pressure, and then full bows there. So that, yeah.
I was wondering, Brittany, if you could just walk us through briefly what your harmonic map, because you start with the marking is in C major or A minor, and then we get to C minor, right? And then just going through, and then we end on an E major chord. I'm just curious to hear your thoughts.
I had no specific harmonic structure. I wasn't like, oh, I need to start in this key, I need to end in this key. That wasn't in my mind at all. I was just, whatever came to my mind at that time, I just kind of, spat it out onto the paper.
Yeah, I think it's really beautiful what you've done, and harmonically very interesting. I'd be curious to see if you really dived into that. So you had all of these ideas and tonalities and keys that you're living in, right? Because it's quite like diatonic whenever you're in a key. If just really thinking about that and what you want to achieve with all these different, the keys are a kind of color too when we're writing in tonal music. So I think that could be really interesting if you really dive into what you're trying to achieve and like the relationships between the keys, since you have so many and they're so colorful. So yeah, that was one thing that I found really interesting when we get to D major and then we end in E major. Like, yeah, I thought it was really fascinating. So
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. Like every key has its own emotion, its own tone.
and especially on the violin, right?
Yeah.
D major is such a common key in our repertoire. It fits really well on the traditional string setup, right? G, D, A, E. And so different keys have those different ways that they resonate on the violin, like D flat, so that's something I think if you're interested in writing this, really, really beautiful tonal music, that's something you could explore more.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I think with that, just like, I don't know, there's like, I feel like always the thingy, but just with key signatures themselves, like sometimes they're really helpful in terms of like placing people, like if they're long runs, people know, kind of what scale they should be in. But seeing kind of like such a like heavy, I don't know. I mean, they're neighbor tones, like when these flats appear and stuff. But I also like it also, I feel like folks are kind of comfortable with just no key signature and accidentals being where they are when they're there. So it also, if that if you're kind of constructing harmony idiomatically or kind of through playing on your instrument and making it that way, then maybe like that could be a helpful, like not writing with a key signature and instead just kind of like letting pitch variation happen when it happens. Yeah, might be helpful just so that there aren't, kind of any clashes of anything. especially if you're like not in the key, but like the key signatures that like, I don't know. It's not a thing I ever kind of talk about with anyone.
Yeah.
Like I'm never like never do that. But I think just here it's a place that could help.
Okay. I didn't even realize that I kept one key signature throughout. Okay, I will change that. Thank you.
No worries. It's like the auto settings of notation software that just like mess us up the most. Like for example, like clarinet, like you'll be writing and it'll be natural and you'll be like, oh, I'm just writing in whatever key, and then the program will think it's in like C, and so anytime you click the transpose button, it'll go to like D major. It's like it's not who we are. So you have to like click no tonal or atonal, I think is like a key signature or something. But yeah, anyway. Yeah, it's like one of those things that like it'll like happen and happen. You're like, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Why is it? And then you go kind of do it. Cool. Well, do we have any final thoughts? Yeah, this was yeah.
It's beautiful writing, Brittany. I would love to hear you as a performer composer play it sometime.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was really cool to hear to hear a piece written, by a violinist then played by another violinist. It's really cool. Awesome. Okay, so that was all three of our pieces for the workshop tonight. I just want to invite maybe all of the composers back on stage all at once. If any of the three of you have any sort of like thoughts or comments or questions, either for Inti or Adrienne or for each other or anything like that, feel free to ask it. If not, we can just kind of give you one more round of applause, whatever you like. All right, we don't have to put anybody on the spot, but congratulations to all three of you. It was so lovely to hear your music being played live. I've gotten a chance to look at the scores beforehand, but it was great to hear them performed and to hear your conversations about the pieces too. So we will virtually clap for you. Yeah, excellent work. All right, so for all of you out there watching, I will just reiterate one more time the dates that I mentioned at the beginning. So we have two more workshops like this, one on cello, which will also feature Inti, and that is on November 23rd, also at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And then the last one will be on December 3rd. Our composer mentor for that one is Alexandra Gardner, and that features the saxophone. You can also tune in on November 15th. I know that one is at a different time of day. I think it's 2 p.m. Eastern Time, which is a masterclass with our mentorship program mentees who are kind of working with our mentors for a much longer period of time. So we get to kind of know their music over time. And I think that's all we've got for you tonight. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for your feedback and for submitting your works. And hope to see you all at the next one.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. Thank you for submitting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye.